And let's get started the conflict in Ukraine and the situation in the Kursk region. How do you find the situation right now between the United States and Russia? Because Russia is saying that the United States is behind this attack. They have been managing everything for this attack.
Well, one of the things I think that it's hard to uh, say definitively at this point is who's handling what. And the biggest precursor to all this is just history. I mean, this is classic CIA MO. This is what they've always done. This is what they always do. They have now like this kind of modern or postmodern political obvious component where you have someone like Vicky Newland giving out the cookies on the Maidan, not behind closed doors, not underground or whatever. So I think the Russians are exactly right. This is a proxy war by the U.S. against Russia. It always has been since not only 1991, but since the war, since the Second World War. And so all of that underground stuff gets um, brought to the surface. And we're not, again, I've said this before, we're not in a courtroom. We're not trying to prove beyond the shadow of a doubt. The jury can be out for 10 years. You can't give them the right to murder millions of your citizens while you're waiting to prove it beyond their doubt. Everybody knows this. Everyone who studies history and who studies patterns, unless you're like, I don't know, autistic or something, you have like a real pattern recognition problem. And you can't say, oh, I see. Oh, so they do the thing where they get the proxy, the local guys, pick a real right winger, like straight out Nazis if you can find them. Awesome. They did that all through Latin America. They did that with Savak in Iran. They've done it forever, and it hasn't changed. That is the amazing thing that I think has been their support, but I believe also will be their downfall. They don't change the script. They don't even flip the page. It's the same stuff all the time. And now you can argue a bunch of different things. And one of the things that I get exhausted about, because I was just, before I came on, I was looking at some stuff I had written, about uh, Nicaragua 25 years ago, about Kiev 10 years ago, all this stuff, which is, I'd love to say that I was prescient or something special, but I don't think that's the case. I think it's just paying attention. And if you get caught in the minutia, you can go back and forth. There's a school or a point of view that thinks that MI6 or the British are dragging this off course, and they're the ones who convinced it was their tanks that they brought into Kursk and all this. But again, the CIA and the State Department have honed literally for decades the idea of what is it? Plausible deniability. The alphabet soup of here we have the pro independent democracy sensitive office of development or whatever and there are certain strata to this, and once you get one of those in your country, that's the third door. They're just about to invade or stage a coup. And this is Putin is not, he's amazingly patient and dry. That means he's Russian, I guess. But he'll just say, without repeating it ad nauseum, just off the cuff, well, 95% of all of the terror attacks in the world today are set up by the CIA. And it's kind of a dry, off the cuff kind of a way of speaking, but it shows a thorough understanding just of how this history has worked. There's nothing really new here. It doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, don't get me wrong. The course thing seems unbelievably stupid. I don't understand it from a military point of view. I think it is a pure psyop for Ukrainians and a political psyop for Americans. It's all about the looks, that it's hegemony as PR, you know, and so that made sense to try to make the Russians look like they're on the defensive, but it just and also their response is very very Russian or Chinese. That's one of the reasons that these two are getting along so well, is this ancient cultural bond. It's like, you know what, this is a problem. Yeah, they could kill some of our guys. Well, you know, we're just gonna move some people over there. We'll see. Uh, First of all, you cut off the head of the snake. Then you cut it up into little pieces. You surround each piece and then destroy them bit by bit until you get to the tail. Get on the other side. Make sure they don't have any supplies coming in. Do you want to move? You want to change the whole thing and come up from Pokrovsk and Zaporozhye? Oh, no, 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 no. Leave that all in place, because that's crazy. We've already, you know, that's where the real fight is. We got to take care of this. I mean, they're killing civilians. They're shooting tank rounds at a van full of a family leaving their farm under fire, and it's like they follow around with a notepad. Okay, yeah, I got you. Well, that's another one. We're writing you down, buddy, and you're going to pay for this. Not tomorrow, not in Kursk, maybe in Tehran. You know.
Yeah. The way that the conflict is going on right now, so far we've been witnessing that Russia, as you've mentioned, is so patient in their attitude and their way of thinking and their way of fighting. But do you think this attack on the Russian soil would change their attitude toward Ukraine?
Um, in a very important sense, I think that because what's really strange is how odd and psychologically weird the Western view of foreign people and foreign governments is. Their idea that you have, and they make up words like Dozht, leader of the Russian people, the henchman, strongman. Think of the thesaurus. Roger wrote a special, you know, chapter on things that sound a little like leader, but not president, not anything that has, you know, they're evil, they're head gang leaders, all this stuff. The single man in control of the theory, like great man theory. And in reality, it's the West that has a single face. Well, it doesn't really matter what the face is, as we know from watching it over and over and over, but on the same puppet, the exact same, the henchman, the hegemon is a Western face. And in the East and in Russia, in China, you really do have institutions that are long standing and responsive to what there's a reason. You can say what you want about elections. Unless you're American, then, you know, shut up and sit down. You have no right ever to say anything about elections. The ones you pretend to hold or the ones you have absolutely eviscerated in your entire history. But elections are a mess everywhere. But it really does mean something that Westerners just don't understand. That this person gets 85%, that this policy, this belief in going forward. And one of the reasons is that you can be as patient as you want, but now people's children are dying. They'll have 100-year-old former tank commander in Kursk who was part of the most violent battle of the entire European theater in 1943 that American historians are completely, school kids don't learn about it. Americans don't care or know a damn thing about it. But this is our grandparents' land, their farms, their actual places. First of all, you have this discrepancy where the U.S. doesn't even know what a Continental Army is. What they've done is have expeditionary armies, expeditionary forces since the Civil War. Sure, you can send 100,000, and maybe you can send 200,000, but you're sending them somewhere else. They're not defending their homeland. And of course, this is a change within Russia. People are really angry. And that patience he's not a remarkable person. I think he's pretty amazing, actually. But I don't think he's a unique human, a unique individual. I think he is being stoically Russian. This goes back to the Soviet era when they had slogans like "Dela idut, kontora pishet," which means, yeah, things are going. How are things going? Things are going. The office is writing. Kontora pishet. That's like, paper is being produced. Things are happening the way they're supposed to happen. Don't worry about it. Skoro будет. It will be. Skoro, soon. Skoro будет. And so he's just being rational and reasonable, not like ridiculously, painfully patient. It's reasonable. It's only American to think that if you hang people from bridges in Fallujah, everyone else is going to bow down and give you everything. If you destroy everything, then everything will belong to you. It's like a toddler, like child's play. And outside of that Western mindset, that's not how people generally think. And it's not how they fight when they fight a war. So I don't give him all that credit. And I do say that what has changed is certainly the basis. Take it on Western political terms. He now has a green card. He can do whatever he thinks is necessary. And I mean, Gerasimov, all of the general, the staff, which is a 300-year-old institution that has its own internal and cultural rhythm and contradictions and history and education. This is a 1,000-year-old story, and it was very stupid to think that they could do this again and again, as I say, because I don't think it's worth. I listen to Andrei Martyanov. I think he's a fantastic, fascinating guy. Dimi, one of the mappers who's scheduled, and it's Andrei calls it war porn. I used that term way back, as well. But following each, they mapped 7 tanks into this and that, and then Podrovka and Shashinovka and Gostinivka. And yeah, okay. But you have to remember, how is it different from Pinochet, from Arbenz, from Mossadegh, from Carter's foray into Tehran, the desert, where he lost the election based on something that Reagan had played behind his back in October. That's the start of the whole October surprise idea. So if you zoom out a little bit and use our own patience, we can say, okay, yeah, well, you know what's going to happen now. And what is going to happen is the defeat of the empire's latest overreach that we predicted 10 years ago. Just not, you can't win, and my whole life I've written and talked about this, and I love being able to think that way. I've been committed to what I consider to be the right side of history just because I think it's the right thing to do. I never thought I would live to see the empire on the edge of its own drowning whirlpool. I even when the Iraq War started, and there were those enormous. Remember, there's tens of millions of people in the streets, all from Cairo to Paris, Rome, everywhere. And what did they do? We were all kind of disappointed because it didn't stop the war, but it prevented the Turks from letting them use a northern entry. It had something to do with it. It set the stage that yeah, the people actually do matter. You have enough money and enough bombs and enough bullshit to smooth it over this time, just like you did in 53 and 57. You can't even count years in the Dominican Republic and Nicaragua because you got to go by months. Every year they intervened, every month they intervened. But all good things come to an end. So,
In your opinion, when you look at the war in Ukraine, if we assume that the main goals, that main objectives of this conflict were to weaken Russia and just destroy their economy, it doesn't seem that has been working for the United States or for the West. But it doesn't seem that they're changing their mind toward this conflict. And with having that in your mind, do you think that the West, especially I'm talking about the United States, is able to risk a nuclear war with Russia over Ukraine?
yeah, that's a really interesting question, Nima, because I am watching this with my wife unfold, and she's not white, not American. It's a fascinating mix of perspectives that we share and histories that we own together and as a collective. It's like, why would people do this? Why would they invade Kursk? The Ukrainians didn't do that. That's America. Why would they blow up a power plant to make noise? That's insane. Well, let's think about that. Why would they do it? To scare the Russians. That's the stupidest, most childish, kind of like sociopathic drivel that you couldn't even write words yourself. But let's just take a step back. When was the last and only time that the world has erupted in nuclear conflict with the United States dropping the very first bombs on Hiroshima and 3 days later Nagasaki? Non-military targets on purpose to incinerate 180,000 people, which led to millions later on. Why? You heard Truman. We'd have to talk again. Select another hour for Truman, but they didn't care. It wasn't because it would have taken an extra 6 weeks to win the war. Well, then you move up with history. It would have taken an extra 6 months. It would have taken an extra million men. We would have lost 8 trillion men if we had invaded Japan and blah, blah. And when, again, you wait for that 10 years to elapse, it was to scare the Russians. The Russians had just entered the war, were marching through Korea, and had to be shown that we had this toy that they didn't yet have. That was, I try not to be too simplistic, but I understand that people like when you're talking, it's like being the uncle at a barbecue. You want to tell a story that people really want to understand. And I will never oversimplify it, of course, but I will never accept the idea that it was a very difficult thing whatsoever. It really is that simple. They just blew up stuff to scare the Russians. And so now in Zaporozhye, in Kursk itself, you have a nuclear power plant. We might. We might. I The broader question about that is, would the U.S. and then you have to parse your words too, because who does that mean? Vicky Nuland is not the U.S. or her husband or any of these billionaire bunker holders, right? Why would they start a nuclear war? Well, I mean, there's one theory that they're part of a tiny clique of the billionaire class that even has scripted depopulation. They don't care if they can live a few weeks underground and come up later and it's just a few million people left, they'll be just fine. I mean, that sounds crazy, but it doesn't sound as crazy as the things that they've done. So the danger is, obviously they don't get it on a human level. Like, this is going to backfire. You were unbelievably wrong in your predictions. Every single thing that you predicted has been flattened about the Russian capacity, the response of the military, and they still come out with these ridiculous. Oh, see, they only had their running. What were they running out of? Remember, they were running out of missiles. They were using washing machines to take the chips out of. And it's just like someone at the CIA who has too much time on their hands. He's, I don't know, a few months from retirement. And he wants to write something funny. Well, let's say they're using the microwave chips, or just wrong and stupid, silly. We can laugh about it, and I feel kind of bad about that because it's not my city being bombed. And one thing that Americans are really good at is not paying attention until it's their city. It's like George Carlin, the comedian, said, "Oh, Pakistan, it's too far away to be any fun. Let's go look at the race car driver down the street. The car's flipping in the air, caught on fire. That's cool. Gas leak. Someone else's problem." So will they? I don't know. I really want to believe that they will not risk that, and that my job is to say it as loudly as I can and let as many people know as we can that they are dangerously close. This is an unbelievable lead up to World War III. I mean, in fact, I think that's a little too much to the point. This is World War III. It's already happening. It started a while ago, and now it's changing. It's morphing. There are escalations. There are provocations. There are all of these things happening, especially with hybrid war. One thing I learned from Andre is like, this hybrid war is hybrid war. The news has always been a part of the war. There's no such thing. That's not a new, that's not a new thing. War is everywhere. It's all part of the economy, part of the press, part of the social engagement. And so, yeah, this is who we are, and we have to let people know that this is actually happening. Then, if that people are scared enough by the right thing, maybe they will put some pressure on the people holding power. But I sound really underconfident, and like I'm making something up there, because I don't feel that confidence. I don't know. I don't know. Do you? I mean, what, like, you see it happening? Don't you see how really close it is, and how shocking it is that people have no idea? It scares me.
Yeah. The other player in this conflict is Europe, the European Union. How do you find the European Union right now? Do you think they're willing to continue this conflict with the situation right now that they're having? Even right now in the United States, we have two parties, Democratic Party and Republican Party, two major parties who are in
One party.
in charge of any sort of policy coming out of Washington.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you find the European Union when they're right now they're just looking at what's going on in the United States and their situation right now with Ukraine? In your opinion, how do they feel about what's going on in Ukraine considering the United States?
Well, I think it's a densely layered thing, and it's hard again to just throw simplistic things at it because it depends who we're talking about. What we can take is, the European Union. Is it a like really encrusted bureaucracy seated in Brussels and living off its own fat and then suppressing any kind of sovereign impulse that any of its members have in the further pursuit of this larger goal? It's like, Walmart swallowed a continent. That there's and so no, you can't do that. Yes, we have to do that. Yes, and it merges without even thinking about it with the Nazi uh, inspired cabal that started NATO. I mean, NATO was like rehired Nazi officers to start, and then they built this whole thing. But again, there's this kind of amalgam, like a Borg, and so there's that part of it that it's really hard to break a runaway freight train if you have 8,000 cars full of lead. Um, then you have the political strata, this thing that's been happening all over the West with the development of a itchy, scratchy, like, we hate this. This pisses us off. We need to get rid of you people. You people, the bureaucrats, the people that I have, and then immediately get labeled as right wing, as populist, and populist is bad. Remember, populism is always bad. It means bad people do bad things. It's like, well, I don't know. You can say Huey Long was a demagogue, right? And all this stuff it's like, well, someone who's trying to lead the people, who cares what the people? Of course, you have mobs, but Wall Street isn't a mob. it's a rigged card game in the middle ring of a circus. It's like an unbelievably bloated, self-aggrandizing gang. So the downplaying populism as something inherently right-wing, that's what they always do. And then anti-liberal, right? All the things that they have taken from Adam Smith onward, that liberalism means laissez-faire economics, first and foremost. Then the superiority of the cult of the individual, all this stuff that if you splay it out doesn't sit that well with a lot of people. And so they create a centrist, a fake corporatist centrist party personality to wipe out the actual left, like Mélenchon in France, for example. And then you have the Macronism rise to prevent Le Pen. And you have people who have grew up as members of the French Communist Party or PS, and who would never vote for Mélenchon because in the final analysis, they want to stop Le Pen. And that's what the Trump thing is. This is what the bad press about the the yellow vests, about any pseudo, or not pseudo, but uh, actual populism. Things organically don't happen like color revolutions. That's not what happens. You get a bunch of people who all of a sudden all show up in one place with a yellow sign that's printed in the same font, like at the CIA owned printer down the street. Wow, that was really spontaneous. It's difficult. It's entangled and octopusish, and sometimes they will. You have the anti-immigrant thing, which is huge, but also has to be uh, understood in the context of Koch brothers, people wanting to, billionaire capitalists wanting to bring in more immigrants to repress uh, wage hunger of the native working class. Just like Jay Gould said, this is 100 years ago. I'm not worried about the working class. From where I stand, I can hire half of the working class to kill the other half. And he wasn't kidding. And that's what it always meant, was to divide. And anyone who pretends that they are either liberal or progressive or forward thinking without a class analysis, without a race based class analysis, is just wasting time. And we're not going to get anywhere with these people, because obviously there's few. What is it? The millions or the millionaires? That was an old anti-Tory thing in British elections. Who are you for, the millions or the millionaires? And there are millions of us, and there are a lot fewer of them. But they control a lot. And one of the things that they control with astonishing strength and self-hatred of the populace is the mind. The way people say, no, they said that. Have you seen some of the things that we're supposed to think about the EU, the specific people within the EU, whether Olaf is this, whether Macron is that, and then in the American context, whether RFK is this, or oh no, he's crazy. Didn't you hear? He's crazy. Yes, I heard from the guy 3 tables down from you at the bar who said it. He obviously heard it on NPR, and he had never even bothered to see whether he could have an independent opinion, and he doesn't even know that he doesn't have a critical thinking basis to any of this. And I think that the conflict within the EU, you have to, I know this is a really long-winded way of explaining it, but I think it really is complicated. I think that that's part of the political evolution in Western democracy. I can't even say democracies. It's such a lie, but they get away with so many lies. I don't know.
The question is right now, is the United States together with Europeans? I think that the United States is deciding everything about everything. Europeans just following the order. But if you put the United States and European together, do you think are they learning anything from the war conflict in Ukraine to not go to a new conflict? It's not a new conflict. We are having it just to escalate the situation in Taiwan with China, because that would be huge. That would be something that can go beyond any sort of imagination.
Yeah, you mean like I said, like just flipping the page without changing any script, any characters, anything, without taking anything from the act that you just ended. I agree with you. I think that the U.S. is in charge of all of this. And when I say that, of course, we're using shorthand, because there's no such thing as the U.S., Europeans. It's the cabal that has taken over the State Department, the neocons on the foreign side and neolibs on the domestic side. That's the machine levers that are being pushed. And when it comes to who is learning, sadly, I think that the only actual learning is coming from these populist, right-leaning, sovereign kind of uh, based. I don't want to say movements because I think that people are capitalizing on it, but I think it's people waking up without access to the right kind of information that they should have, the right understanding of history, and sometimes they do. I don't know. I read there's a guy, a black construction worker who's an activist who made a life of befriending uh, Klansmen, white Klansmen. He would go talk to them, and he would convert. He's converted like 100 of them in his life, and they help with, like, it's like a gang leader kind of thing. The point is, if you have those things down, which are, we are not on the same side as the people who are in power, and we are the ones who are going to pay for and suffer from what they are doing. That is a lot of final questions answered before you have to deal with the race, immigration, all of that stuff. And so I think that sounds Orwellian, but if there is any hope, if there's hope, it lies in the proles. Was I think, was that from 1984 or Animal Farm? I think it was 84. But that's the thing. The people who are going to die if this happens are probably going to be more in the way than people who, what Dmitry Orlov called, I love this term. Now I know he's Russian when he comes up with office plankton. These are office plankton. Because, who is in these enormous corporate high rises of crap doing what? Like financial, what? They're a waste of space and time. And he coined the phrase office plankton. I think it's hilarious, but they're incredibly useful to the ruling class, I think. And they're incredibly hurtful to us, which is why I think people who, I'm not making party invitations, but people who think we are on the right side of history, and history is on our side, about who to talk to and how, and for how long, and what kind of crap to take from them. In other words, do you get to Maybe one of the things I was looking at today was things that I did 20 years ago, and today, now I'm 60, I would rather now walk into a bar and chat with some guy who's a plumber about what a shitty job this town is doing with charging taxes for something that they don't control, that they don't even do. Because it's important that you have contact with people and you talk critically and thinking about solutions and accountability. And what happened in the US in these terms is even scarier because, first of all, anything about presidency, I'm so sick of talking about American presidents. There's one president. There's one. That's it. Ronald Reagan was elected in 1980, and he's been reelected every 4 goddamn years since. They changed the tie. They changed the gender, apparently. They changed the color a little bit. They changed the party. But that's it. That's it. Bill was almost as good as Ronnie, and Obama was even, better than Bill. And so this is that. But the policies are identical. The foreign policies are identical. The anti-worker, local policies. But one thing that they never fixed on purpose was that Reagan eviscerated eviscerated everything that trickled down. They love talking about trickle down, but the trickle down economics in government terms was the feds picking up the tab for local street lights, for all sorts of things, education, healthcare on the local level. That was all stripped completely. Then the states got sick of it, and so they pass it down to cities, and now cities and towns are having these arguments about funding society, about funding civilization. And my God, if you went in there and you wanted to talk about the wars, you're a crackpot. So what do you? Why are we even having this discussion? Why do you think there's no money here? They have us fighting each other when we should always be talking about the things that got us here to begin with. And it's like, I teach little kids, so I'm thinking about tying shoes. You undo the laces, and if you don't bother to do them back up, you're gonna trip. It's not. It's you're just gonna fall. You're doing the same thing over and over again, pretending that there's change when there's not. And so people buy into it. It's mind numbing. I don't know. Are you in Texas?
Me?
Yeah.
No, I'm in Brazil.
Oh, Brazil. I thought you were. I thought I saw Austin at something. Okay. So you don't have to. Well, I hope it's better in Brazil. But it is a. Someone was saying the new. I think it was Dan Kovalik saying this. McCarthy 2.0. Like this is like, you start to talk to people and say, "What? Oh, I guess I can't continue this conversation." Maybe if we took. Oh. Can't start that conversation either. How's the weather? Yes. Aunt Sally looks wonderful today. I gotta go. You can't believe the elections. I mean, they'll go on and on about Trump, and they have no idea what Harris stands for because she doesn't say anything. And they just keep on, again, with the reference I made earlier about whether you heard a thing about how crazy RFK Jr. is on NPR or something. The same thing applies. There's a name for it. They call it Trump derangement syndrome. But people are so brainwashed that you can't even say, well, yeah, but that one's dead. Well, yeah, but that turned out not to be true. Well, yeah, but that was a complete scam from the beginning. Well, and it leaves you with it's beautiful. Chomsky was talking about how we limit the tiny window that we have to discuss, and you can go force back and forth within that window, and it looks like you're having a real election there. But there's no conversation, there's no critical thinking. It's kind of it's hard to be raising kids in this, trying to teach them like, don't listen to all these people.
Thank you, Dan, for being with us today.
Okay,
Great pleasure to talk with you.
All right, I hope to see you again, and I'll have a great rest of the week. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dana.
Bye-bye.